Yo everybody, welcome to another episode of Vesteban's Blood Box. We're here to talk about things metal, all things around metal and such. You know how it goes. So today we're going to talk about things more in the around metal genre. Another genre I am very much a fan of, Goth music. So this is going to be partially a collection update because I got a lot of new things in, which sparked me wanting to do this. But I'm also going to show you some of my other things I've had for a while. All of this is going to primarily be focusing on newer stuff within the 2010s. Goth, of course, has a long history going back to I'd say about 70s is really when it started, what really kicked it off, but then the 80s really formed it. And then from the 90s on, it kind of went crazy. So we're going to focus on just newer stuff, things, if you want to check it out, if you want to get into the newer Goth stuff that's out there. Similarly to metal, Goth has, I don't know if you'd call it subgenres per se, but many genres within the realm of Goth. So you've got, like your Goth music that would be considered true Goth, which there's debate on what is true Goth. But also like post-punk, which certainly stemmed from the punk scene, but has a little more of a cleaner, moodier sound to it than straight-up punk. Also things like dark wave, which is more synth-based. Even like new wave and synth wave can fit within there. And death rock and things like that. All sort of encompassed within the realm of Goth. So a very big world to check out there. I've recently gotten into the older stuff, which sparked me looking for newer stuff as well, which is where I came across a lot of this. Being newer to the new stuff, I'm not sure if the scene's actually been around and I just haven't known it, but kind of like in metal, it feels like maybe the 2000s had a little bit of a drop-off from a lot of things happening in that, so I kind of feel like in metal there's a lot of stuff going on in the 2000s, but there was less than there is now for sure. There's definitely a spark of metal since the 2010s. And it kind of feels like in the last 5 years, the goth scene's really starting to do that too. I mean, you've always had your people that have been in the underground the whole time, keeping it alive, but it is certainly getting a resurgence, and there's lots of amazing bands out there. So, let me show you some of them. So what we're listening to, and I'll actually get into this in a moment because I've got some more from this label, but this is a compilation tape, Night Voices, from Occult Whispers Records out of Chicago. Killer stuff. So that's what we're listening to in the background. Kind of get you a bunch of different bands on here. But we'll get into this in a minute when I get to some of the other records from that label. But I want to start first with a couple tapes I got from a new label, brand new label. They just had their third and fourth release out, I think it was last week or the week before, called Reclusion Records. Straight up post-punk. Definitely goth, but very much post-punk bands that are being put on this label. In fact, the very first band they put on there was a Russian post-punk band, which Mark Addington, who's the guy behind the label, introduced me to Russian post-punk, which there's a lot of killer shit from Russia, from Soviet Russia back in the 80s. They had a stellar post-punk scene and goth scene, so... really cool label. The stuff they're putting out is fantastic. For metal fans, you'll probably be familiar with Mark's work. He is the guy behind Folkvanger Records, the label that I have my album on, and a lot of folk black metal and atmospheric black metal projects, and some dark ambient kind of music as well. But the guy is fantastic. Great guy to work with. Mark's awesome. And his new label is Reclusion Records. He's just wanting to do this also alongside Folkvanger, and it's been really successful so far. And the stuff he's putting out is fantastic. So, we'll start with this, Nori. And also, by the way, Reclusion Records and Folkvanger Records are primarily cassette-based. I think he does have some vinyl out through Folkvanger. I'm not sure if he's going to do vinyl with this or not, but cassettes are available on that Bandcamp. But this is Nori. Beautiful Devotion. This is a international band. I think it's maybe a little bit of a supergroup, combination of people from other bands. This is their 3-track demo. The only thing that would make me even recognize this as a demo is because it only has 3 tracks, but it is a very, very well done and professionally recorded cassette. It is fantastic. I did make some notes on some of these because I am fairly new to some of these, like Nori and some of the others. Yes, so The Cure, right? The Cure is kind of a band that is really known for being one of the pioneers, I guess, of the goth genre, if you will. The vocal style of this group very much fits in with The Cure. You would remind you of that a bit, so if you're into that sort of thing, you'll dig this. A little bit faster paced on the guitars and the drums and everything. It's definitely it moves a little quicker than your typical Cure songs. And I'm just using The Cure as a point of reference just to give you an idea. It's kind of the easiest thing to do with some of these new bands, but please know this is definitely, it's their own project. It's not a rip-off of The Cure by any means. But there's some similarities, so if you're into that. But yeah, Nori, awesome stuff. Every track is fantastic. It's one of those ones, the second I heard, like 2 seconds into the first song I checked out, I ordered the cassette as soon as it was available because it's really fantastic. Also one of the bands, so it's under the goth realm, but I would say this is more on the punk side of post-punk. It feels more like it's got a punk influence than like really heavy goth type stuff. But again, fits within the goth realm perfectly. Again, goth is a broad genre, very broad genre. So definitely check this out if you've not heard of it, or Reclusion Records. Again, that's at Bandcamp. I'll have a link in the bottom there. But this is a killer cassette release. Along those same lines, also from Reclusion Records, this was released the same day, is the album Blue from Cerulean Veins. As you can see, I think it's, straight up blue cover. It's perfect. Much longer record here, has quite a few songs on it. This is a US-based band, I believe. So this one, I had heard it described when I was looking on Facebook and stuff with the release of this. I heard this one described as a mix between She Wants Revenge and Interpol. So if you're familiar with those bands, both goth post-punk bands, I'd say Interpol is really like straightforward post-punk. Like when you think, if you know, what the hell's the name of the band? If you know Joy Division, Jesus Christ. Joy Division, that's kind of, I think, technically the first goth post-punk band ever. And, Interpol borrows a lot from Joy Division. There's also some influences you can hear on here. And She Wants Revenge has sort of the, maybe faster-driven, sort of goth vibes in there. Again, same thing, only using that as a point of reference for this, so if you've heard of those bands, you'll kind of know what to expect from this. Certainly its own music and vibe and feel. It's definitely original work. And I would honestly say, I've really been listening to this one a lot. I really love it. Much respect to She Wants Revenge and Interpol, but I feel like what both of those bands are trying to do, Cerulean Veins accomplishes. I think they do it the best, if the comparison's to be made between those other bands. She Wants Revenge and Interpol can get, and maybe it's just because they're really popular, but I feel like they can get a little gimmicky sometimes. Cerulean Veins feels much more genuine, and still focuses on the sounds of the genre. The vocal style has that sort of monotone vibe to it. Not a lot of movement. Guitar work's really kind of straightforward. Chorus, but very clean. Heavy bass, which is again a big thing in post-punk, but really executed very well. And probably, in my mind, one of the top albums out there for that true post-punk. I would say 2000s post-punk, although this just came out, I think this year, or maybe last year, but just been released by Reclusion Records. I think this one kind of is the one on the top up there. It's a really fantastic cassette. And if you go to Cerulean Veins YouTube, during the quarantine, the lead guy from it has been doing a bunch of acoustic performances of the same songs. And they're fantastic. It's really cool to hear them done on the acoustic. So definitely check that out as well. Again, Reclusion Records. They've got 2 other releases too I'm going to try to pick up before they're sold out. One's a Russian post-punk band, and then the other one, I'm not sure, but they're both really good. And I think they're selling out fast. So if you're interested in this stuff, check them out quickly. Alright, so that's kind of the indie label stuff for the goth scene. The other one I have that's also an indie label is what we were talking about at the beginning, Night Voices. Again, this label's name is Occult Whispers Records. So I found this at Lori's Planet of Sound in Chicago. I worked right next to it, and I'd go there on my lunch break. And when I finally got into cassettes and got my cassette player that you see back there, I was just trying to pick up cassettes anywhere I could. Came across this. Thought it looked cool. It's got kind of a graveyard cover on it, so it certainly looked like something that I'd like to check out. Was not disappointed. Again, that's what we've been listening to the whole time in the background. So I would say, again, with Reclusion Records, goth, but more on the post-punk vibe. Night Voices and Occult Whispers Records is more of the sort of airy, gothy side of things. I would say, think of The Crow. That's always something I reference when I think of goth vibes and looks and stuff. This music feels like it could have replaced everything else that was in there. So yeah, Night Voices, killer compilation. They have it on their Bandcamp as well for $5, I think. So definitely check this out. Just gotta say too, especially it's the same with most genres right now. There's lots of small labels popping up, but these small labels are just kicking ass finding these bands because it's far better than a lot of the mainstream stuff I've been hearing with the same kind of influences. Just more genuine music, I feel like, or more of a genuine feel behind it. On that, 2 of the bands I found on that compilation both have a 7-inch available on the Occult Whispers Records Bandcamp. So one is Air Hunger. That's this one here. Got a nice, cool, gothy. See if you can see it. There you go. Nice, cool, gothy picture on the back. If I'm not mistaken, I think this was the one. Yeah, I think this band got together and this was written to be a 7-inch. They just did these 2 songs for it. I might be getting them mixed up, but I'm pretty sure it's this one. And then same thing, Annex here is the other band that was on the compilation, but I picked up their 7-inch as well. Again, both these bands have that. And this isn't either one here, but similar thing. A lot of chorus on the guitars, still very heavily bass driven. Clean singing, but getting it, has that kind of monotone sort of vibe that is common within the post-punk goth scene. Annex has a female singer, and she does more of the sort of 80s kind of punk, not shrieking, but sort of higher, pounding vocals, as opposed to Air Hunger, which has a little more of the, like I said, the monotone brought down a little bit style of vocals. But both killer. Definitely check out Occult Whispers, their Bandcamp as well. A lot of things aren't expensive. I think it's $7 or $8 for the 7 inches. Same with Reclusion Records. I think it's about $8 per cassette, which is pretty standard. So, check them out. Moving right along here. Alright, so we're going to switch gears a hair here, because again, we're within goth, there's a lot of different genres, as I keep saying. So those are more of the post-punk goth. The next band I'm going to talk about is straight up 80s goth worship, and that is Photocrime is the name of the band I'm getting ready to show you. Got 2 albums from them. Got the second album, Principle of Pain. Awesome cover. And then the first album, which is called Always Nights. I had to look at it because there's the single off this is Always Hell, so I always think the album's called Always Hell. But this is the first 2 albums. There's a third one that just recently came out as well. So, start with this. So, Photocrime is actually the brainchild of the main singer from the metal, maybe kind of, I don't know if it's hardcore per se, but kind of metal band Colosseum, if you've heard of them. To my understanding, he's a big fan of goth music, so he wanted to start a goth band and started doing this, and it's been doing really well. And you can't see it, but if you saw the video, saw him in Chicago at Beat Kitchen, so that's where I picked these up. But, so this style of goth, if you're familiar with the Sisters of Mercy, another very big, somewhat originator of a lot of the modern sounds, especially using heavy drum machine, I would say Photocrime is sort of Sisters of Mercy worship. Now, same thing as before, using that as a point of reference, but Photocrime definitely makes it their own. A lot of influence from Sisters of Mercy for sure, but it is definitely their own sound, and they do a very good job with it. Can I cassette over? It is. Hang on, I'm going to flip the cassette real quick. It's the problem with doing cassettes while you're doing videos, right? So anyways, Photocrime, Sisters of Mercy. Same thing, guy uses a drum machine. I'm not sure if he's named it, but I know it was a Dr. Avalanche, I think, was the name of the drum machine in Sisters of Mercy. He also uses a drum machine. He does have a live band that plays with him occasionally. I think it's a second guitar player and a bass player. But he also can do the shows solo, which I do believe he did a European tour solo with just him and the drum machine. Really, really, really well executed music in general, and extremely well executed goth music. I would consider this traditional goth. The songs are fun, the songs are catchy, but there's also emotion with it too. There's not a song I've heard I don't like. I can listen to all of these front to back. So Photocrime is definitely one worth checking out. Really consistent too with the albums. I haven't listened to the newest one a lot, but between these two, very consistent. Not a lot of change between them, but there's no need for it because it's just really well done. So first album, this one's cool too. You get a lot of songs on this too. I don't know if you can see it. For being a single LP, there's a pretty decent sized track list. So as you can see, it's sort of labeled as dark wave as well. I don't really know much of the distinction between that and goth or whatever, but solid stuff. What's cool too, and I copied it, is the artwork on this, because if I'm not mistaken, the guy behind this and the band itself is located in Chicago at the moment and have been for a while, I think. But the cover of this was painted by Noelia Towers, and it's just a really cool, just kind of badass, fits the vibe perfectly cover. And I'm going to read what it said on the website because it's kind of cool. So, the stunning original album cover artwork was painted by Chicago via Barcelona artist Noelia Towers, known for her beautiful, challenging artwork depicting elements of BDSM and feminine power. An in-demand painter and apparel designer, this is her first commissioned album artwork. So that's pretty fucking cool. I mean, her first album artwork, obviously a well-known artist, but just it's cool. I like when album artwork, was very intentional with the album. And again, I would say this album artwork fits the music perfectly, absolutely perfectly. So, big fan of Photocrime. Definitely check them out. Just for fun, too. I do have a little bit of Coliseum stuff. This was his first band. Coliseum put out this split 7-inch with Doom Riders, I think is the second name? Yeah. And Coliseum did I Am Demon, by Danzig. So this is Coliseum and Doom Riders doing covers of Danzig songs. So, cool stuff, too. Definitely has a metal vibe. Obviously the guy, I wish I should have looked up his name, but the guy behind Photocrime is a metal fan, but also a massive goth fan. And I'll also say, comparing bands to other bands is sometimes kind of obnoxious, because it makes it sound like they're ripping it off another band or whatever. But again, I'll keep reiterating it. The point of it is just so you can get an idea if you've heard of these other bands before. But using Sisters of Mercy as a reference for Photocrime isn't so much of a negative thing, because the guy has come straight out and said he's a massive Sisters of Mercy fan and posted a picture on his Instagram he's got every vinyl of Sisters of Mercy, I think, that was ever released. And he said, you can guess where my sound comes from. So he's a big fan of Sisters of Mercy, so that's cool. You can definitely hear the influence. I'm also a big Sisters of Mercy fan, so that's probably why I like Photocrop so much. Alright, so moving right along. So we've got some post-punk, we've got some straight-up goth. So I'm going to pull out another album because it transitions into a couple other albums I have here. I've already shown this in a collection update once, but it fits within this realm and also kind of moves through the genres of goth a little bit. So we're going to show it again. And that is Drab Majesty's Modern Mirror. So Drab Majesty is, I would say, more of a synthwave influence. You get it from the 80s. Obviously, that's kind of why they picked up a lot, is they have a very strong 80s vibe. Their first couple records had a little more of a goth, and again, keep using post-punk as a reference, but maybe some post-punk in there too. This record pushes in much further into the synthwave vibe, but still has some of the elements of goth too. Again, that's the hard distinction, because a lot of these bands can fit into a lot of different genres. But Drab Majesty is really fantastic. Probably one of the better known bands from this sort of resurgence of this 80s and 90s sort of goth vibe. They've been doing really well. They've been getting on a lot of charts that many underground bands I don't think usually kind of cross over to. And I think on some level, I mean, I could be wrong, but it's like in the 80s, right? Everybody was fascinated with the 50s. It's always that nostalgia of about 30 years before. So, we're hitting the 2020s, so the 90s, but even still the 80s are still somewhat big in the nostalgia. You've got a lot of things coming back from that era. I mean, look at Stranger Things and how much of a hit that was. Big influence from the 80s, everybody loving that feel and vibe from the 80s. Things like Dungeons and Dragons, which none of these things ever were gone, but they're coming back big time. So I think that it contributed to a lot of these bands sort of having more of a platform to come out on. Again, all of this music has existed underground, but it's not just been so much in the forefront as a lot of other music has. And of course, we can always say, and it's the truth, with the invention of the internet, everything's accessible to us now. So if you find a niche you like, you can find that music. But all of that to say, Drab Majesty is one that's moved up in the ranks quite a bit in the music world. Really well known. This album did spectacular to my understanding, and it's a spectacular album. Difference of, why I'm bringing this up is this crosses over into a little bit of a different vibe, because, the first bands I was talking about, all live instruments. Photocrime, all live instruments except for a drum machine, and now Drab Majesty, we move into a lot more synth aspects and heavy synth layers and things like that. Still a single guitar in there, but primarily synth driven. But still not a full electronic dance band per se or anything like that. So again, you've heard me talk about this one before. If you've not checked this out yet, definitely check it out. It's fun, it's just solid, it's really good stuff. So Drab Majesty, Modern Mirror, stellar stuff. And so the reason I wanted to bring that up too is that transitions into this other side of goth, which is electronic music and a lot of dance music. These other two bands I bought on a whim. I saw them recommended because of the stuff I was listening to. And I don't regret it. It's introducing me to more of the electronic dance side of things. We have gone out, there's a nightclub up here, of course we haven't lately, but we've been going out to this nightclub in Minneapolis called Ground Zero, which has been around since the 90s, I think, maybe even late 80s, but it is a straight-up goth dance club. You've got gargoyles everywhere, there's spider webs, it's got a lot of gothy stuff. It is a dance club, so you have, a dance floor. They play all new wave, post-punk, goth, synthwave, all that stuff's played there. And the cool thing about this club is it has a live BDSM section in the back, which BDSM goes kind of hand in hand with goth music, but it's got church pews and a stage. And you can pay, I think, $20 to go up and be hung and slapped and cut and all that sort of stuff. And it's pretty legit. I've heard it gets more extreme in Europe with that kind of thing. So it's kind of light BDSM for the masses. But it's cool. It's fun. we're not really BDSM people, but it's a fun experience. So, anyways, point at that. Cool dance club here in Minneapolis. We've been frequenting quite a bit when we could, and kind of was piquing my interest in some of the sort of dancier goth stuff. So when this was recommended to me online, I thought I'd check it out. So yeah, we'll start with this first. I think it's TRST, and then it's TR-ST is the name of the band, and then the album is just TRST, which I think maybe is not an acronym per se, but trust, I guess is what you call it. That's what I've been calling it. But this is straight up electronic music, fully electronic, but very much goth. So goth electronic music is not like, you don't think like techno or hip hop or anything like that. You still have the same kind of dark melodies, sort of monotone singing, and there is vocals on all of these. So it fits all of the same elements, but just using purely electronic music. Not super familiar with this band, but I have been listening to this album, and it's pretty cool. Dude's got an interesting voice, sort of just interesting affection on his voice. But awesome album cover. Just, I mean, looks like an old Polaroid or something from the 80s. There's not really much look on there, but yeah, that's kind of cool. So, yeah, and this one, maybe there's hints of industrial music a little bit on there too. So, you know, industrial being like Ministry, Nine Inch Nails, bands like that. Also, on the cusp of being goth, I think you could say, but not as extreme, not as harsh. So softer elements, but definitely that darker, moodier vibe. But definitely fits within a dance club. I think this gets played quite a bit at a lot of goth dance clubs from what I was seeing on reviews. So cool stuff. If you're looking for more electronic music but don't want sort of the over-the-top, happy, you know, I'm on ecstasy type of electronic music, give this a try. Cool stuff. And then another one, just kind of one, I was next to this one online, and so I thought I'd try it. This is Boy Harsher is the name of the band. Careful is the name of the album. So this one is... Well, I'll go back. I said this one was kind of dancey. It is dancey, but it's a little more maybe experimental on the electronic side. Certainly some dance songs, but there's some different stuff going on here. This one fits more in that dance club, dance type electronic music. Same thing I was saying about Trust or TRST. You know, it has the darker, moodier melodies and vocals and things like that, but definitely has a beat you can dance to. Feels also similar to the beats you would hear in post-punk. It's hard to explain, whatever sense they're using. You know, in post-punk you have heavy bass-driven music. You get a similar vibe from this, but it's not a live bass. It's whatever synth they're using for it. Let me see. Oh yeah, so this one too, and I say that because, again, with post-punk, there was a big scene in Russia with that. This feels like it's got some influences from Soviet 80s Russian post-punk. And again, being fully electronic, but still takes some of its influence from that, I think. It's what it sounds like to me anyways. But also a stellar album. Definitely one worth checking out if you're wanting to get more into the electronic side of things. Certainly an interesting listen for sure. I would say that both of these are an interesting listen. You know, not as I don't want radio friendly is the wrong word to use, but not as accessible maybe as some of the other ones. But that also might be me. I don't listen to a lot of electronic music. So, but yeah, Roy Harsher, cool stuff. Definitely worth checking out. So yeah, I think that's about it. That's some of my newer goth stuff. I have classic stuff too. I'll go through at some point in time. I'll probably want to do a more involved video with that because there is some history of how we got to here from there and everything that happened in between. And there was some interesting stuff going on in the late 90s, early 2000s with goth. But yeah, cool stuff. Definitely check it out. I'll put links to everything at the bottom. One last thing before I forget. I did have to cancel the live stream I was going to host this last Saturday due to an illness, which was a bummer because I was really stoked about that, but I will be doing another live stream soon, probably in the next couple weeks. So I'll post it up and let you all know when that's going to be happening. We'll have lots of fun people on there. So yeah, just let you know that is still coming eventually. So love you all. Thank you for checking it out. Metal and Goth forever.